Hello everyone, welcome to a Christmas Wonderland. Today we are going to have a very special Christmas edition where we are going to read about all kinds of Christmassy beings, traditions, and all of that. Since I've been reading some demons and monsters, lore lately, I thought, why don't we read about someone related to Christmas? And as promised in the thumbnail, the first story that we are going to read is about Krampus. Yes. So, let's just start. The last day before Christmas had passed, and a bright winter night had come on. Stars had appeared, and the moon rose majestically in the heavens to shine upon good men and the whole world. The frost had grown more severe than during the day, and everything had become so still that the crisping of the snow underfoot could be heard across the village. The moon peeped stealthily into the window of the cottages, as if inviting the children who dwelt within to make haste and run on the crisp snow. Suddenly the smoke rose from the chimney of a single hut and went up like a cloud in the sky. Along with the smoke appeared a dark spot, which went on growing, spreading, and soon became no longer a spot. It was a little creature with a narrow snout that turned his way and that smelling about. It had thin legs resembling those of the village elders, and a long pointed tail like the skirt of a dress coat. A look at a goat's beard under its snout, at the small horns sticking out of its head, and at the whole of its figure, which was no whiter than that of a chimney sweeper. Anyone would guess that it was Krampus in person, to whom only one night more was left for walking about the world and tempting good men to sin. Krampus stole warily to the moon and stretched out his hand to get hold of it, but at the same moment he drew hastily back again, as if he had been burned by it. He shook his foot, sucked his fingers, ran around on the other side, sprang at the moon once more with both hands, and making wry faces and blowing hard, he threw the moon from one hand to another, like a peasant who had taken a live coal in his hand to light the pipe. At last he hastily hid it in his sack and went on his way as if nothing had happened. And now, what was the reason that Krampus had decided on such an awful step? He knew that a certain rich merchant was invited at an evening party at the parish clerk's abode. And he knew that in the meantime the merchant's daughter, the belle of the village, would have a visit from Hans, the blacksmith's son, whom Krampus hated more than anyone or anything else. Hans was a lazy boy who complained often and rarely helped his father with smith work. Worse still, he spent his leisurely hours painting the devil in mockery and bragging that he did not fear old Krampus. For this reason, Krampus vowed vengeance on the boy. He only had one night left to roam about the world, and in that night he sought to play some evil tricks upon the child. So stood events that hardly had Krampus hidden the moon in his pouch, when all at once it grew so dark that many could not have found their way to the grocery shop, still less to the clerks. What the devil? Where has the moon gone? Said the merchant, stepping out of his cottage and gazing at the pitch-black sky. That must be the trick of some evil spirit, for I have hardly crossed the threshold, and behold, it is as dark as blindness. The merchant took a long time to moan and groan, thinking all the while what was to be done, for he greatly wished to have a gossip about all sorts of nonsense at the clerk's lodging. Well, so the moon is gone. Really, it is very strange, nevertheless. I will go, said the merchant, and away he went. The merchant's beautiful daughter was left home alone. Greta, not yet completing her 15th year, was already considered the most beautiful girl in the village. Greta knew this well, and she was as capricious as a beauty could be. The lads followed her in crowds, but she used to put their patience through such trials that they all ended up leaving her alone. The blacksmith's son was the only one who did not desist from his pursuit, but continuing it, notwithstanding her ill treatment, in which he had no less share than the others. When her father was gone, Greta remained for a long time decking herself and coquetting before a small looking glass. My goodness. A strange girl indeed, muttered Hans, who had in the meantime entered the room, and no small share of vanity has she got. There she stands for the last hour, looking at herself in the glass. Startled by his presence, Greta uttered a cry and put on a severe look. "Why have you come here?" she began. "Do you wish to have me take up a shovel and drive you from the house? Oh, you sense in no time when my father had turned his back on the house. Away with you." She then took the mirror and once more began to adorn herself. She does not care for me, thought the boy, hanging down his head. Everything is but a play for her, and I am here like a fool standing before her and never taking my eyes off her. What would I not do only to know what is passing in her heart? Meanwhile, the frost increased, and it became so cold that Krampus went hopping from one roof to other, blowing his fingers to warm his numb hands. He caught a glimpse of a merchant who was already a long way off from his cottage. Instantly, Krampus ran across the way and began to break asunder the leaves of frozen snow which were lying all around. Then began a snowstorm. The snow went rushing backwards and forwards and threatened it to cover, as if it were a net, the eyes, mouth, and ears of the merchant. Then Krampus was quite sure that the merchant would retrace his steps to his house, and there he would discover Hans and give him a sound thrashing that the latter would never again have the strength to mock old Krampus. As soon as the snowstorm began, the wind blew sharply in the merchant's eyes. Pulling his cap further down and feeling great remorse, the merchant began to abuse himself. The distance he had to go before reaching the dwelling of the clerk was 8 times as long as that which he had already gone, so he turned back. In a short time he saw his cottage. Great heaps of snow lay around and covered its roof. Rubbing his hands, which were numbed by the frost, he began to knock at the door, and in a loud tone ordered his daughter to open it. Hans heard the call and, coming to the door, asked harshly, "Who are you, and what business do you have lurking about this door?" The merchant, not recognizing the boy's voice over the hissing wind, demanded the door to be opened immediately. Not taking the threat kindly, Hans angrily replied, "Begone with you." The merchant tried the door again, but it was locked in earnest. "Begone," said Hans. "Look, what a bully," said the merchant. "I will go to the police." The merchant, pulling his cap further down with great agitation, stormed off in another direction. At that time, the gentleman with the tail and the goat's beard, who had witnessed the whole affair, laughed wildly and flew from his rooftop perch into a nearby chimney. He carried with him a sack in which he had hidden the stolen moon, and in some way or another it caught on something in the chimney and flew open. The moon, availing herself of the opportunity, mounted through the chimney and rose majestically to the sky. It grew light all at once. The storm subsided, and even the frost seemed milder. Sounds and laughter and caroling resounded as crowds of lads and lasses made their appearance. A troop of maidens pushed their way to the merchant's cottage and bewildered Hans by their shouts and stories. He opened the door and the troop surrounded Greta. Everyone was in a haste to tell something new to the beauty and show her the gifts they received for Christmas. "Such beautiful new boots you have," said Greta, turning to one of the girls. "I have no one who would give me such pretty boots as a gift." "Don't grieve about the boots, Greta," chimed Hans. "I will bring you such boots as few ladies wear." "You," said Greta, throwing a quick, disdainful glance at him. "We shall see where you will get such boots that will suit my feet, unless you bring me the very boots which a princess wears." Just a pause here. This story resembles me a tale by, I don't know if it's a traditional tale or if it's a tale by Gogol, but it is about like a devil or Krampus during Christmas, and like a pretty lady, and she wanted the pretty shoes. So this boy who liked the girl, he kind of negotiated or like tricked devil to take him to the palace where the princess lived so he could get the shoes that only princess wore. Is this the same story? Did this author plagiarized it? Let's see how it unravels. Anyway, "You," said Greta, throwing a quick, disdainful glance at him. "We shall see where you will get such boots that will suit my feet, unless you will bring me the very boots which princess wears." The maidens led the capricious belle away. Hans was all agitation and distress. He went on his way without noticing anything and without taking any part in the rejoicing. Krampus had in the meanwhile settled comfortably in the dying coals of a nearby hearth and meant to spend the evening undisturbed. expecting the chief inhabitants of the village to attend to evening party at the clerk's house. And yet quite the contrary happened. Hardly had Krampus arranged his nest when there was a thumb up at the door and someone on the street cried, "Open!" It was the blacksmith's son, Krampus. The quick devil kept into his pouch, which took on the appearance of the ordinary coal sack. Hans came in, and without saying a word, without taking off his hat, threw himself on the bench. It was easy to see that he was in a bad temper. His eyes rested on the coal sack, and he exclaimed, "Why does this sack lie here? I ought to have taken it away long ago. My father must think me a lazy fool. Tomorrow is Christmas, and the room is still full of rubbish. I will clear it away into the smithy." Hans dragged the heavy sack, in which was coiled up the devil, out of the cottage and into the street. The songs and shouts grew louder, and the crowds of strolling people were increasing by those who came in front of the neighboring village. Hans, with his sack, stopped suddenly. He fancied he heard the voice and laughter of Greta. "I have not the strength to endure it any longer," lamented the love-struck boy. "Let my soul perish. I will make a deal with the devil and have those royal boots in the bargain." At this, Krampus who had long remained quiet and motionless, rejoiced at the glorious victim he had entrapped. He could not endure to see Hans get free from his clutches. As soon as the boy left the sack a little loose, he sprang out of it. Hans felt a cold shoulder run through all his frame. His courage gave way, his face grew pale, and he knew not what to do. He was already on the point of making the sign of the cross, but Krampus bent his head in a low bow and said, "Here I am, your friend. I will do everything for a comrade and a friend such as you." Hans stood considering. "Well," he said, "on this condition I am ready to be yours." Krampus clapped his hands and began to indulge his joy in springing about the boy. "Now I've got him," he thought to himself. "Well, Hans," squeaked he, "you know well that nothing can be done without a contract." "I am ready," said the boy. "I've heard that it is custom with you to write it in blood. Let me take a nail out of the pocket." Feeling at ease, Krampus turned his back to the boy and began to search his pouch for a binding contract. Just then Hans made the sign of a cross, and Krampus was immobilized. "Have mercy upon me, Hans," groaned Krampus in a lamentable voice. "I am ready to do whatever you want, only do not make the dreaded sign of the cross on me. Take me on a ride directly and hurry. We shall go to the nearest palace and obtain the boots of the real princess." And the boy thought he should faint with terror as he felt himself rising up in the air. It's exactly the same story as I said. Aye. I'm not going to mention which book it is, but it's very unfortunate that people use these stories without giving credit. At first, Hans could not help feeling afraid at rising at such great height. He rose so high that he could distinguish nothing upon the earth, and coming to the moon, he had to bend down, or he would have certainly touched it with his cap. Yet, after a time, he recovered his presence of mind and began to laugh at old Krampus. The boy went on flying, and as the clouds cleared, he saw the royal palace below. Soaring past the town gate, Hans exclaimed, Good heavens, what a noise, what a clatter, what a bright light! On either side rose houses several stories high. From every quarter the clatter of houses' roofs and the end of wheels arose like thunder. Krampus flew at an open window of the palace and escorted Hans into a magnificent hall. "Now, devil, get in my pocket," said the boy as he went up a brilliantly lighted staircase. Having ascended the staircase, he heard voices coming from the adjoining room. Hans opened the door, but he knew not where to turn his eyes. He saw a multitude of ladies dressed in silk gowns with long trains. They gasped when they saw the imprudent boy, and he was unsure how to make his exit. All at once the maidens parted and bowed to the beautiful girl with the blue eyes, and a majestic smiling air approached the boy. He fell on his knees and the side of the royal princess. "Rise up," said the beauty in the commanding yet soft voice. Hans arose and raised his eyes to the princess. She smiled kindly and said, "My father promised to make me acquainted tonight with the people under his dominion, whom I have not yet seen," said the blue-eyed girl. "How you have managed to find your way to my room, I do not know, but I assume you have come here to request something of me." "Princess, do not be angry with me. Only let me know of what stuff your boots are made. I wish to give such a pretty pair to my sweetheart for Christmas." The princess laughed and said kindly, "If you wish to have such shoes, then your wish may be easily granted. Let him have my richest gold embroidered shoes." In a moment the shoes were brought to the boy. "Gracious, what ornaments!" cried he, overpowered with joy, grasping the shoes. The princess could not refrain from smiling at such compliment from a simple-minded lad. When the princess turned to her ladies, the boy bent his head towards his pocket and said in a low voice, "Quick, carry me away." He instantly disappeared from the palace. In no time, Hans left the palace gate far behind. Krampus, with the boy on his back, flew with great speed until he reached the village. The boy dismounted and, seeing Krampus in the act of sneaking off, caught him by his tail. "Wait a bit, my dear fellow. You must have your reward." And taking a stick, he gave him 3 blows across the back, so that poor old Krampus took to his heels. Hans was so exhausted from his travels that he collapsed upon a snowy mound and instantly slept. And when he awoke, he was alarmed at seeing the sun high in the heavens. He went to his cottage, but nobody was there. His father had not yet returned from the Christmas sermon. Hans washed himself and dressed in his finest suit of clothes. Then he went straight to the merchant's cottage. Greta opened wide her eyes as she saw the boy at her door. "Look at the boots I have brought you," said Hans. "They are the very boots which a princess wears." Greta remained quiet for a long moment, pondering over the strange sight of the royal boots. Something within her told her that she had behaved with too much cruelty towards the boy. Her face turned all crimson, and casting her eyes, she said, No, I do not want the boots." Never yet had she been so marvelously handsome. The exulting boy smiled and gently stole a kiss, and her face flushed still redder, and she looked still prettier. And that is the end of the story. Indeed, the story was exactly the same as I have foreseen. There's actually, this story is so popular. It's actually a comedy, and there's more people involved. There's a witch. Again, there's a devil, there's a witch, there's many people, merchants, whatnot. And like, it is a kind of a dark comedy. More events happen within the story. And yeah, I think obviously I can find the story and name it in the description, so you can check it for yourself. But it is so popular around Ukraine, Russia, etc., which was where I think, again, don't quote me, but I think it's either a tale by Nikolai Gogol or a traditional, like a folk tale. But it is so popular that it was made into a musical with like lots of famous people playing the roles and singing. It was during Christmas that musical was premiered. Anyway, since we have read about Krampus, now I think we still have time to read about Father Frost. There was once upon a time an old woman who had a stepdaughter and a daughter of her own. At anything her own daughter did, the woman would pat her head and praise the girl. But no matter how hard the stepdaughter tried, she was always found to be in the wrong. Truthfully, the stepdaughter was as good as gold. In the proper hands, she would have been like cheese in butter. But in her stepmother's house, she battled in tears every day. The old woman often scolded her. She would hurl one insult after another, and her mouth was so full of venom that her teeth itched. What a sloth! What a slob! Don't bother weeding the yard. And the weed is in your own hut. Never mind. I'm not familiar with this kind of insults. One day, the stepmother made up her mind to drive her stepdaughter out of the house. She said to her husband, "Well, old man, we will give your daughter away in a marriage. Get up early tomorrow, harness the mare in the sleigh, and gather your daughter's belongings for a visit." And the next morning, the elderly man prepared the sleigh and sat down for breakfast with his daughter. The stepmother filled the dish with soup and said, "Well, husband, take your daughter to the bridegroom. Go straight along the road and then turn off the road to the right, to the forest, straight into the big pine tree and the start of the hill rock, and give your daughter to Father Frost." The man's eyes widened, his mouth dropped open, and he stopped eating. "The groom is handsome and rich," cried the stepmother. "He has many splendid things, such as Christmas trees. His life is really enviable. He himself is a hero." The old man felt sorry for his daughter. He loved her because she was hard-working, obedient, and kind-hearted. He did not want to contribute to her grief, but he himself was sickly and his wife was always nagging, so he silently put his daughter in the sled and drove to the wilderness. He stopped and set his daughter down under the pine tree, made the sign to the cross over her, and hasted home as fast as possible, that his eyes might not behold his daughter's death. What a nice father. The poor little thing remained there, shivering and softly repeating her prayers. She wanted to cry, but she was strong and only her teeth were chattering. Suddenly she heard not far away Father Frost jumping from one tree to another. he came leaping and bounding and casting glasses at the lovely maiden. Father Frost found himself on a pine tree under which the maiden sat, and from above he said, "Are you warm, maiden?" "Warm, warm, Father Frost," she said. The tree branches cracked and snapped as Father Frost began to descend below. Frost asked the girl, "Are those little hands warm, maiden? Are those red cheeks warm, maiden?" The girl trembled slightly, but still said, "Warm, Father Frost, warm, darling Frost." Father Frost was about to crack her body and freeze her to death, but he was touched by her wise words, pitied her, and covered the maiden with fur coats and blankets. In the morning, the evil stepmother said to her husband, "Go, fool, and bring home your daughter, so that we may bury her body." The weary man harnessed his horse and rode. He found his daughter alive, wearing a good fur coat and veil embroidered with silver and gold. She was surrounded by warm blankets and rich gifts. Without saying a word, the old man put everything in the cart, sat down with his daughter, and drove to the village. This is another tale that I know. Is this just a compilation of like Russian slash Ukrainian traditional tales? Because this also is very popular. It has several movies, an animated movie as well. Like, this is seriously very, very popular where, I come from. Anyway, I'm a bit upset, if you cannot guess yet, that this book, I will check afterwards and I will leave a note in the description if I find any reference that the book is describing, like, in a shorter way, these tales. So if there is credit, I will give it, but if there is none, then it's very unfortunate. Anyway, upon arriving home, the gate creaked and the hut door flew wide open. The old man brought in the heavy blankets and gifts, followed by his radiant daughter. She looked at the grand lady, the stepmother. She looked like a grand lady. The stepmother looked at her and threw up her arms. "You can't trick me," she cried. "Harness the horses and take my older daughter at once. Put her in the same field, in the same place." The obedient husband took the girl to the same field and left her under the same pine tree. Far in the distance, Father Frost began to crackle and jump from one tree to another. Frost came closer and closer until he found himself on the pine tree under which the maiden sat. He said to the girl, "Are you warm, maiden? Are your little hands warm, my darling?" "Oh, Frost, it hurts icily. My poor fingers froze when I waited here." Frost began to descend lower. The branches cracked and snapped. "Are you warm, maiden? Are those rosy cheeks warm?" The spoiled girl trembled in irritation. "Are you blind? Can't you see that my hands and feet are frozen? Go away." Father Frost grew angry, seized her, and killed her. The next morning, the wicked woman said to her husband, Hurry, fool, and bring back my daughter. Be careful not to turn over the sleigh." Arriving at the little pine tree, the man found his stepdaughter frozen to death. He wrapped her in a blanket, put her in the cart, and drove back to the village. The old woman, seeing her husband from afar, ran out to greet her daughter, but instead she embraced a cold corpse. She began to wail and howl, but it was too late. And that is the end of the story of Father Frost. From the story that I know, There are actually several stories about Father Frost and like there are also like 12 months. It is a very fun story about 12 months. It is also a very poor girl who is sent by her stepmother into the forest to look for, I think it's apples, cherries, something like some kind of fruit, but it is in the middle of winter. So obviously, it's kind of like she told her to go and not go back without the sad apples or cherries. I can't remember which one. So yeah, she was wandering. She was wandering the forest, and she was very sad. She was very cold, and then she saw a fire, and around that fire were gathered the 12 months. So obviously it was, I think it was January that was in domain at the time because it was winter. So the months were like impersonated in person. Okay. I was trying to find a fancy word for that, but anyway, so the months were like people. So each month was a person. The winter months were a bit older, like with the beer, white beer and stuff like that, looking kind of like a Father Frost or Santa Claus, whatever. And then spring months were very young, and yeah, everyone was dressed kind of like in a way that resembled the month that they represent. But anyhow, and the story is that she told her very sad tale of woe to the brother months, and they decided that I think it was April. I can't remember. But anyway, one of the months that was responsible for the fruits, I think it was it must have been summer months, like June, July, or something like that. So the months decided in that circle where they were seated, they would let, let's say, July come before January ended his domain, so that everything bloomed, and the fruits started to appear on the trees, and so she was able to collect the fruits that she needed to go back home. And they dressed her as well because obviously they pitied the poor little thing. So she came home carrying the berries, and she was dressed very nicely, and her stepmother was like, "What is this? Where did you go? Where did you find the berries? Who gave you the clothes?" and stuff like that. It is actually also a Christmas movie from old Soviet times, but it is a tale, kind of reminded me this one, but there is another traditional tale that is as dark as this one. So exactly like that, mother tells to go and take the girl comes back with the all the majestic gifts, looking like a lady, very fancy, and then she sends her own daughter who dies, and then the daughter leaves, and I think she becomes like Mother Frost because she goes and gets together with Father Frost. Anyway, but I think it was nice. I don't think I'm going to read any more stories because it is a little bit upsetting to me, in a way that these stories are being kind of copied. So anyway, but also on the other hand, keeping it positive, it reminded me about these movies, about these tales that I used to read, I used to watch on TV when I was little. And again, maybe, you know what, I will include them in the list of my to watch things this year for Christmas. There is usually a movie that I watch every year, and it is an old Soviet era movie that used to be shown on TV every year during, I think it was in between Christmas and New Year's. From when I celebrated Christmas as a child, New Year would come first on 31st of January, ending on 31st of December, and 1st of January is the New Year, and Christmas Eve was on January 6th, and then Christmas was on the 7th. But of course, things have changed now. Nonetheless, me and my family, we celebrated like this. Also because my older brother, his birthday is on 25th. So it was never Christmas, it was his birthday. And then it was the New Year's, and then it was the Christmas on the 7th. Nonetheless, since we went to Portugal, it's never Christmas, it's always my brother's birthday. And I think it's nice in a way that we don't put Christmas over my brother's birthday, but also it sucks because only my older brother would get presents on 25th. Because it's his birthday, and when I grew older I tried to give presents to everyone because it was also Christmas, right? But either way, that did not stick. Then I left and they deal with Christmas and my brother's birthday on their own. I do think that they still celebrate or have a special dinner on the 6th, which is Christmas Eve, that we used to celebrate. So my mother usually makes some of the dishes that we used to have traditionally, and they still celebrate Christmas on the 6th. Me, on the other hand, I kind of forgot, it's in the back of, I still remember it. Usually that's the time that I keep my Christmas tree up until 7, and then I take it off on around 8 or after that date, basically. Sometimes it stands there for a bit more, but it's pretty. Nobody cares. It's just me, so it can be Christmas all year around, right? But yeah, this year though, I will implement my own celebration. Now that we are at the end of the video and I already rambled for a while, I bet most of the people who don't care already left. So I can mention these things to the people who are still here. If you are still here, comment with something red. And thank you for still being here. Anyway, this year I want to celebrate in a pagan way. So I'm going to have, I will call it, it's not my idea, okay? It was ChatGPT, but the name for the celebration is going to be Ember Light. So Ember Light, I'm going to celebrate it on the 21st. and which I think is when this video is going to be posted. Fingers crossed. But either way, I'm going to celebrate it on the 21st because it's around the time where the night is the longest. And it usually was a pagan celebration for Yule, for other things, etc. So I wanted to have my own pagan dedicated celebration, and I'm calling it Amber Light. I'm going to kind of turn off all the electric things. I'm going to light up a few candles. I bought like a small branch of pine, so it's like has this fresh smell. And I got some dried orange tea with some cinnamon and stuff like that. So I'm going to cook the tea. I'm going to have the tea while the candles are burning, and I'm going to I don't know, maybe have like a singing session or something. Maybe I can recall like some of the songs that are a bit, I don't know, more nostalgic or stuff like that. Not necessarily Christmassy, just something that I could entertain myself while just sitting there. And I wanted the celebration to be like that because that would be the kind of celebration that our ancestors had. So like back to like caveman and maybe even Neanderthal. If you know my videos, you know my thing with Neanderthals. But yeah, so I wanted to do something at the light of fire, drinking this tea, not necessarily very ancient, but again, maybe they did drink tea with dried peels of orange or something like that. Yeah, and do something without like books to read, without, I don't know, like a TV or something to entertain myself, just being present at the moment. That's it. I don't know, maybe that will inspire you to have your own celebration. I already mentioned I am not religious, so Christmas per se, I think that it's quite a bit more commercial now. So yeah, it is what it is. I'm not going to go there. But either way, look at me looking all Christmassy and commercial, right? The commercial version of Christmas. Anyway, I think I have rambled enough, but I enjoyed reading the stories. Again, it reminded me about the old times. I think I was going to mention a movie that I used to watch every year during the Christmassy time, but then I went on a whole tangent. But now it came back to me and I'm going to mention it before I go. The movie is a very fun comedy. It's again Soviet era, and you know, the Ivan the Terrible. There's a time travel machine, and Ivan the Terrible exchanges places. He stays in modern day Moscow, and people who look like him stay in old time Moscow. And the whole story is about the time traveling. Again, it's very funny. And it is called Ivan Vasilievich Changes the Profession. It's a difficult name, but again, I think it is online because last time I watched it on YouTube, so I will try to remember to link it as well. Anyway, I think this is going to be my last video, probably of the year. Maybe not. So who knows? But it's definitely going to be my last video before Christmas and before Amber Light. So if you celebrate, see, it's time to go. If you are celebrating, even if you're not, this time, if you're spending this time with your family, if you're having a short break, I hope that, again, you enjoy the time now, even if you are not spending it with anyone, even if you just spend it alone, spend it, I don't know, if you would like to spend it with me, seeing my videos, maybe watching the movies that I recommended, going to look for the stories, whatever makes you feel, good. Either way, whatever you're doing, if you're spending the Christmas alone or with family, I wanted to wish you a warm time and just all the best. A lot of things are happening, but I'm going to say that we are going to make it. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you soon.